If you work in the security space, learning SQL and how to use a data warehouse is no longer optional. And we actually think it's essential. Today, we're going to be talking about why. This video is for security engineers who are looking to learn more about data warehousing and data engineering principles in general, and how it may affect the way that you work as a security engineer in the future. We'll be diving deep into the current state security engineering, and we'll be discussing the evolution of cloud data warehousing platforms and how that's changing how security engineers work. We'll also be providing some practical steps and anecdotes and talking about how that all works along the way. But my name is Joe Carlson. I'm a data engineer and developer advocate at CloudQuery, and I'm joined by my co-host Yevgeny Pats, the CEO of CloudQuery. Let's get started. Okay, first of all, Yevgeny, thanks for coming, man. Another episode in the books.
Yeah, thanks for hosting me.
So first, let's just talk about like where security engineering is today. How are security engineers working?
Yeah, so I think security is a really big space. So there's like a lot of security engineering. So probably like we won't like cover everything. So like my answers like will be pretty short. But I think if we like take just one area, maybe around like we can talk a little bit about seams, right, or threat hunting.
Yeah.
Right. And just focus like on that a bit. That was like kind of the cornerstone of a lot of things. So that originally kind of originated like on something like Elk Stack, right, in the last kind of 7-10 years. Splunk, right, and kind of a lot based on search, like search, Datadog, like search was really heavy there. So you kind of ingesting logs from a lot of sources, from antiviruses, from like different systems, and kind of searching for alerts, searching for intrusions, for IOCs. So
so you're mostly just working with like a massive amount of logs, searching through those and looking for like anything that would indicate maybe a threat or compromise, whatever. And it's primarily like alert based. So you're kind of getting things based on search or queries to your provider for whatever is going on. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and you mentioned the Elk Stack. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, so it's like Elastic, basically the Elastic search stacks. It's Elastic Kibana for dashboarding, and what's their like Logstash for something else I don't remember. But basically Elasticsearch for the backend, and whatever you use for visualization, whether it's Kibana or anything else. Like a lot of other systems kind of verticalized it, like Splunk, right? Splunk is like really security focused, and it was kind of the go-to solution for a lot of years. But even today, it's a big player, right? And for logging, and it's under the hood. I think it uses something like similar to like an Elastic system, but kind of fine-tuned for security purposes.
I mean, you mentioned it's been around for like 7 to 10 years, and it seemed like it's been working fine. But like, why are people running into limitations with those systems?
Yeah, sure. So I think one, like, number of logs, number of systems that you have today that you want to monitor really like grew, and because you have more SaaS solutions that you want to monitor. The cloud with thousands of services that you want to monitor. So it really grew, and it became expensive. I think that's probably the main thing. And also, depending on how you run it, it can also be slow. Like there will be a trade-off, like how slow you want it to be or how expensive you want it to be. Like the bigger, you will need like bigger clusters, or maybe you will need to like fine-tune your indexes very well to make it fast and not expensive. So it's running into some engineering challenges at that scale. So that's some of them.
And on top of that too, like whenever you get like massive amount of logs, you're going to start getting a lot of noise, and it can be difficult to cut through that, which is a nightmare. And also when I've worked with logging systems like this too, and the problem I've run into is it's too expensive for us to save logs for a long amount of time. So like we have no historical data for us to kind of compare things to, which can get tricky.
Yeah, exactly.
The other piece too that I've seen is with search, you're kind of setting up these search rules and looking for things to happen. But by the very nature of you kind of preemptively setting up these searches, you're kind of reacting to things. You're like, and if you're working in security, it's kind of like a cat and mouse game, you set up, block some IP addresses, and then, hackers get a new set of IP addresses. It's just
it's a lot of whack-a-mole.
a lot of whack-a-mole. Okay, cool. So security engineering, it's been primarily search-based, very log-driven. And what's happening now in the world of, infrastructure is this massive data warehouse revolution that's happened the last couple of years. Evgeny, can you tell me a little bit about what data warehouses are for those who may not know?
Yeah, sure. So it's a new, well, not a new. It's kind of, it started like maybe 7 years ago, but kind of went through a number of iterations.
Yeah.
And basically it's separate, like it's a new database, or in a way, or a new way of storing and querying data that kind of specifically on the data engineering side, like I think originated less from security problems, but more from like backend data analytics, where data really grew and people started to think, okay, how we can make queries faster and make data storage and queries cheaper. So basically, it separated storage and compute. So use like very cheap storage, like cloud storage, like S3 or Google Cloud Storage or whatever it is, and a query engine on top, which is separate. And the third one, like storing it in a bit different ways, which called like a columnar data format, which makes querying faster.
Yeah, querying analytical data faster, which a lot of times we're doing with data warehouses.
Yeah, so data warehouse, right, is something like Snowflake. You can call it data warehouse, or BigQuery, right? And,
Redshift.
Redshift, kind of the prior. And data lake is usually like when you just put the data just in S3, and then you use some sort of an engine on top, like maybe like Presto or like Athena or something like that. So whatever, but it's kind of similar in a way. It's just like more integrated experience, right? In Snowflake. So
absolutely. The trend we're seeing now is companies are trying to centralize all their data in one place, and they're doing this thing called a data warehouse, and it allows you to run queries really quickly on it. They're able to scale up to massive amounts of data, and they can give you historical context for much cheaper than we were able to do previously. We just have a lot of data. So how does this data warehousing thing affect security engineers?
Yeah, so I think security is now running also into, maybe in the last couple of years, right, running into similar problems that data teams were running like maybe 7 years ago. They just had more data originally from security teams back then. Yeah, it becomes expensive. It becomes slow. And I mean, that's pretty much it. Like when it becomes too expensive, you can't really, or it becomes slow. So, so now you, like a lot of those solutions, or a lot of those teams trying to get data into something like a data warehouse or a data lake, and then query there, use like SQL and not necessarily search. And that kind of takes costs down, but also it introduces a bit of a new ecosystem, right? So there are other things security engineers they're working with SIEMs, like SIEMs or kind of threat hunting or anything else. They need to learn, right? So they need to learn like different set of technologies from a different space. So
I mean, it sounds like, if you're working in security, and it's probably a good idea to be learning at least a little bit of SQL, especially if you're like thinking about trying to use a data warehouse. The other thing too with data warehousing, since all the data is being persisted in this one place, you can get insights that have a little more context than you would with just a purely driven base search. Like you combine it with other pieces of data from other parts of the site to try to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. I think today also for security, especially with things like, I think it's not only in the cloud, but in the cloud it's specifically strong. Like not everything is log based. Like you also have other type of data, which is important or crucial to understand whether like something is wrong, or to give context is like, what is the state of, let's say, your cloud infrastructure. So it's a distributed system, and let's say you want to know what is the state today, what is the state yesterday, and it's not a log, it's just a state. You want to query set of APIs and save it somewhere. And it's not necessarily like always a great feed for logging, but it's a better feed for like a database basically, right? Or take kind of more table oriented structure and kind of point in time, right? Rather than just logging. Because, for example, let's say you have a log that something happened on someone that you didn't know tried to connect to the machine, but now you want to know like this machine at this point in time, like where it like was it connected, like which VPC it was connected to, what other machines were there, how long it was running. So you kind of need that point.
Who had permission to access it? What was changed?
Yeah, exactly. And not only that, like one line of that happened.
That's interesting. That makes total sense. So one of the big pieces then is trying to get your security data or your like log-based data into the data warehouse. Could you talk about like explain what ETL is for someone who doesn't know what that might be, and then kind of how it plays a role in security?
Yeah, so ETL or ELT is basically getting data from different sources, from different APIs or different logs to different destinations. And there are different, like in the data space, there were like different tools to specifically to specialize it, where what they specialize is writing an integration once to those sources, and then being able to send that data to different destinations or different databases, because a lot of time you need that data in potentially maybe in different tools or in different destinations, depending on what stack you use. So that's like the role of that, right? And usually in more like vertical solutions, you usually relied on the like let's say on the SIM vendor to either have that integration, or you had to kind of write it yourself specifically for that vendor, right? So kind of in the data stack, you have specifically set of vendors that specialize on that data movement, and CloudQuery is one of them. So yeah, you have that like ELT kind of layer.
And what I usually see too is people, they have a couple integrations they want to get into their, a couple security data from their vendor and load it in, and they're writing their bespoke, one-off custom APIs to like load that data into their data warehouse. What kind of problems do people run into when they start doing that?
Yeah, so at start it always looks simple because it's just an integration.
It's a single API, no problem.
Yeah, and then usually the problems that originated is what the number of APIs grow. So this like script, the very simple script that you wrote, start to grow. So there is maintenance cost. Right? So then someone comes in and he wants to add another API, then he needs to understand, okay, who wrote this script? Like, where do I update? Where does it run? Like, where is it running? Then there are other problems like rate limiting. For example, you don't want to hit the API too hard. So you have to take that into account and to make sure that your code is like respecting those rate limits on one hand, but on the other hand, it's fast enough because you want the data to be fresh. Then the third problem is also documentation, like documenting the data that is getting into the data warehouse, like to downstream users. Okay, you ingested some data, like what APIs you used, what tables, what columns are available. So like apparently like a simple problem actually turns to like a complex problem. And this is why in the data space you have those vendors that specialize just on getting the data very well from one place to other place and providing all of those things out of the box, like concurrency, performance, concurrency, documentation, things like that. So.
Well, can you talk about how CloudQuery solves those problems?
Yeah. So CloudQuery is exactly like an ELT vendor, an ELT solution. So we also maintain an open source framework, which is powered by Arrow. So users can write their own plugins. But basically, each source plugin is getting data, is using one of our SDKs. You can write them in any language, in Go, Python, JavaScript. So it's getting data out of different sources. Various kind of each SDK is batteries included kind of features like kind of rate limiting support, logging, monitoring, documentation. So it gets data out of those APIs. It transforms it to intermediate data format, which is Apache Arrow, which is a cross-language data format, and yet another open source project that maintained by Apache Foundation. And then it sends it to like any destination that you decide. So you can use CloudQuery Postgres, query Snowflake,
Yeah.
BigQuery, whatever it is, and then it sends it to that plugin, and that plugin transforms it from the intermediate data format to the data format of like the destination, right? So you write it once and you can send it to any place, and you get all of those things. It solves a lot of problems that you have in kind of getting data out from those sources.
All right, cool. Let's hear. Yevgeny, anything else you want to talk about today?
So yeah, I think we covered quite a bit. So yeah, it was fun chatting.
Yeah, let's do a quick recap. So today we talked a lot about how data warehousing is changing security, and we talked about how traditional security engineering is being done today with search-based methodologies, and we've talked about how problems you may encounter with using those search-based methodologies, and also kind of like what advantages you get from a data warehouse, as well as some of the downsides of that too. We also talked about cloud, and if you want to try CloudQuery firsthand and find out how easy it is to start analyzing your security data, the easiest way to do that is just to go to cloudquery.io. We'll have that link in the show notes below. But CloudQuery can help you load data from any cloud vendor to any database and allows you to analyze your security data on your own infrastructure and query it and add context in any way that works for your unique system. And you can try it for free. So try that out at cloudquery.io. And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. And for more resources, information, and sources for this podcast episode, be sure to check our show notes below. But I think that's it. Yevgeny, thanks again for joining me. This has been fun.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for hosting. Appreciate it.
All right. Bye.